So Mark, I will turn it over to you and show us all the magic with duplicate flows.
Yeah, so there's, a good bit to it. I mean, there's like 3 or 4 different methods for copy, paste, and duplicate flows. So I'll just kind of go through each one, go through them quickly, and I think you'll get the gist pretty fast. So I've got a project here, just one of my projects open, and I'll start with the copy paste of a flow. So in Bildr, we've always been able to copy and paste. Sorry, I'm trying to move the Zoom window. There we go. We've always been able to copy and paste actions. So if you would go into a flow, you could go here and copy or duplicate an action, copy an action between flows, that kind of thing, from one flow to the other. But on the left panel, we've added a couple of things. One is if you click on the 3 dots here, you now have a copy this flow and a duplicate this flow on the inside of that menu. So you can just duplicate the flow. It'll create the same thing again exactly. You can copy the flow and then take it to another page. So I could come over to this page, go to flows, and just paste that copied flow. And it's going to generate that. What's really cool, if you notice what just happened, this flow actually had nested flows inside of it. So it'll actually copy and paste those nested flows between pages as well. So this created, like a dozen actions or something like that, just that, and whatever it just did between all those different nested flows. So it's pretty powerful. And once you get into where you've got a fairly large project, or you're kind of replicating similar functionality in the same project, which I do quite a bit in different builds, where I've built a set of flows to do a certain type of UX inside of a project, and I want to basically copy that UX onto another page, but I don't want to duplicate the whole page, right? What we've done in the past is we would duplicate the page and kind of delete what we don't want off of it. This lets us go the other way, so you can copy a flow, paste it, and it'll paste with everything child to it underneath. And then we also added another method where when you're in a flow, so I'm just going to use the same one that I pasted in here. When you're inside of a flow, there's a new menu item here called Insert From. And in here, you can click that and it'll let you select from a workspace in your project. So you can select any workspace in your project. And then you select a page from your project. So we'll choose another page. And then from here, you have every flow that's on that page. You can search here and find the one you want. And you have 3 options here. One is you can copy the flow and then go paste it somewhere else. You can also insert and nest that flow directly here. And when you click that one, what it does is it actually creates the flow over here. So it copied it from the other page, pasted it into here, and then nested it inside of the flow that I was inside of. The third option is to go, if we go back in there, go back to item, instead of doing copy or insert, I can actually click on the flow and choose it. It looks like this had a crazy set of things in it, but you can, this is like test data in here too. So click that and you can actually just select a specific action from within that flow. So rather than having to navigate to another workspace, and we do this quite a bit where we have like 3 workspaces, and I know that there's a specific action or set of actions I've set up on this other page on another workspace, and I just want to use that here. So rather than having to navigate out of context, you can just do it right from there. So that's pretty much it for the copy paste flows. It's fairly simple on the outside here. There's a lot of depth in there though, because it will go all the way through everything nested. So if you copy a flow from one page, and let's say inside that flow, it has like this one, 3 other flows nested, and then one of those has another flow nested and another flow nested, however deep that goes, when you paste it onto another page, it's actually going to bring all of that. So it'll bring the entire setup. Now, some of that, depending on what you're doing, it depends on what those actions are that are inside. If inside the action there is, say, a reference to an element on the page, you'll have to go reselect the element from the new page that you just pasted that on, because it doesn't know what that reference should be, right? So some things will just automatically work, things that are system-wide, like opening a page into a container type actions, where if it's the same, when you paste that into the other page, because the same page ID is going to exist, it'll just use that. but anything that's local to the page where you're like referencing another element, for instance, that's really the primary one. You'll have to go reselect that element input argument. And then I would show one other thing too, but before I do, are there any questions on the flows before I dive in?
There's no questions, but I would love to do a recap. So I can either do that now because we had some new peeps come in.
Gotcha.
Steve and Jeremy and Jay. Hey guys. So Mark was showing the new links that we put in for duplicating flows. So the real power of this is that you only need to set up something one time and then you can use it anywhere from any workspace or any page on any other page. So the great thing about this is obviously saving time and saving the energy that you're expending to build something. So if you have really common things like, you know, opening a page and running this flow here or changing style classes, if you just build that one time, you can either copy a single action or copy the entire flow, paste it onto another page. So again, there's a few different ways. So if you want to copy an entire flow when you're already like on that page, just go into the flows list for that page, and then you'll see a link in the 3-dot menu called Copy Flow. If you just want to do it on the same page and just make a few adjustments to the actions, then duplicate the flow, and it'll just duplicate the whole set of whatever that flow is on that page. Then you can open that flow and then make any adjustments that you need to the actions. And then also, if you have any sort of flow that's already copied from another page, same thing, you'll see the paste copied flow link at the top on the flows list on the page. And then it'll paste whatever you've copied from wherever right there into that page, and then you can use it. And then the other method he was showing was when you're actually on a flow. So I've been using this when I'm building something and I create a new flow, instead of going to look for it somewhere and copying it, I'll just do the insert from, and then from there you can find the workspace, the page, the flow, and then either bring in a single action or bring in the entire flow. And then I just usually change out if any of the arguments are like element specific, or I'll delete something and just keep building on that. But it basically just saves you a lot of work. So it's just one of those small things that can have a huge impact. So yes, that is duplicate and copy and pasting of flows. So yeah, Mark, did you have something you wanted to go a little deeper on?
Yeah, I just wanted to show one other thing too that we added, and this one we'll be adding more features to as we go. But in the little toolbar on an element over here, we have open, where you can open it. It'll give you the edit screen over here. We also have the copy, paste with children, and duplicate. There's a new item. If the element allows children, you can actually click add child element from here now. And when you do that, it'll actually allow you to like insert something directly from here, and you just click on it and it adds it as a child inside of that one. So this is prepping for, we want to make Bildr work completely on an iPad or on a tablet completely. And there's a few other things we need to do for rearranging, like reordering things. But this gets you a good step there. It also just makes it to where, like if I'm in line here, I can come here, for instance, and right click and do the same thing. So you can do that secondary click, add child element, type in what you want, select it, and it'll add it there. And then lastly, it's also in the page body. So you can add a child element directly to the page. And then there is one other piece that really won't be that big of a deal unless you're on a tablet. But when you go into the page, you can still drag and drop these off. But if you just click on it, it'll actually add it center middle in the canvas of wherever you're at. So you don't have to do the drag and drop if you don't want to. So just trying to make it a little bit easier to start from anywhere and work from anywhere. That's kind of the goal there. And there'll be some tweaks to this over time. We'll add some things to it. But.
Yeah. Jeremy, is that a yes to building on an iPad? Yeah. Okay. Jeremy's going to be our first beta tester on that one.
Oh, I already am. I'm already like.
Mark has been talking about this probably for like 2 or 3 years. You've been, and then the other night he just like made it.
I was done. I wanted to do it.
Made it work. Yeah. So
there's a little left to do, but it's not too far off now. It's really just the adding. That's really what needs to happen next. The I'm sorry, not the adding, the rearranging, the moving things around. That's the part that needs to get there at this point. But it's not far off. It's really pretty close. I've been using it on my iPad now for the last couple of days and been pretty happy with it. But without being able to rearrange things easily, you kind of get stuck at a certain spot. You're like, oh, I've been copying and pasting, and then deleting. So it's kind of cheating, but it does work.
I'm curious, has anyone who's, I think since the last release we did a few weeks ago, has anyone been using the right click to duplicate or copy or delete elements as they're building, like in the canvas? I hope y'all know about that because it's my favorite thing. And it's made it like so much faster for me to work. Steve says yes. Yeah. Just right click. That's probably my favorite thing that we've done of all time, and it's so small. All right, so Emmanuel's got a question.
Sure.
He's got, we can do it at the end when we're doing stuff. He wants to be shown how to make a grid view instead of a list view.
Sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so let's, I am also a recovering right clicker, so I feel you, Steve. Okay, so are we wrapped on duplicate flows?
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. All right, so next up is going to be Michael. Michael, hit us with your educational content. I think, can he just take control and show his screen marker? Do we have to?
So let me just double check.
Something special.
No, you should be able to.
Yeah.
So Michael, talk to us about what you're working on.
All right, so I'm working on a series of clones that will make it easy for people to be able to build something that they're familiar with, like they know what the end product looks like, they can envision what the end product looks like, and they just need to learn how they can get to that endpoint with Bildr. So I'm doing a series of clones, and I'm going to go with popular sites or social media sites, again, that people would be familiar with. So I'm starting with something basic. So I just did a Google search engine for the first one. I'll probably move on to like Instagram and Twitter and work my way up the chain in terms of complexity. But this first one is building a Google search clone. And so it's just the Google search landing page and the results page in Bildr. And this will be, I think we're going to do this in like a blog post format, but it'll show you what you'll learn while building this clone. And so the areas of Bildr that this covers are page layouts, the basics of CSS. I did add a simple, like how to add font awesome icons in Bildr. And then some of the element types. So the grid list element, you'll learn how to use building this, actions and flows, data collections and managing the data that's in the data collections, and then data listeners and page routes. Just a basic introduction to those throughout this this clone. And what you end up building is, this little search engine here, where you can type in your terms and get a list of results that are in a Bildr database. And so I just loaded some test results in with words like Bildr and Chrome. And the way this is set up is, well, first, I guess I should show you, it's like 6 or 7 videos. I didn't count them, but I think it's like 6 videos. It's roughly an hour, I would say, maybe an hour and a half at the most of content to go through. But in each section, I kind of cover a different area. So the first section, I'm covering just page layouts. So how do you lay out your home page and your search results page with your grid list and your row for each result. And it's like, basic CSS layout and that kind of stuff. And then it goes into the database and how you set up the database. And it even creates this little simple data management tool. So you can, see what links, what search results you've added to your database, add new ones, delete the existing ones, things like that. And then from there, I go into adding icons. And so, as I mentioned, I'm using Font Awesome for some of these simple icons in the Google search page. And then the last sort of 2 videos are all connecting it all together. So how do you implement actions and flows that when I click on things and search for things, it actually pulls the results from the database and loads them in. So that's kind of the high level summary. I'm going to, as I mentioned, I'm going to turn this into a blog post where I'll have I'll have this version that has the videos in it that I recorded, and you can go through each section. But then I'll also have a version that's just like text and screenshots in case someone doesn't necessarily want to go through the videos and you just kind of want to breeze through it. So that's what I've done. I'll kind of stop there and let people ask questions, or I can dive deeper into anything if I need to.
Yeah, everyone feel free to ask questions if you would like. When are we, Michael, do you know when we'll have this ready to share with everyone? I can make a community post and then I'll also upload it to our lessons, and then I can chat anyone who's interested in starting it. Yeah, so the video version is ready now. I have it in Notion. I just need to send you the Notion doc. But this version is ready. Like I said, I'll do a blog post version of it, but this version is ready to go with the videos. I also want to share this as a template as well. So I have the built version, the completed version in Bildr. So if somebody wants to start from here and just look at what I built and sort of break this apart or customize it from there, you could do that as well. But both of these are ready. So Michael, it sounds like you're handling all the different learning formats. So hey, if you like text, like I like to read documentation and stuff like that, you'll have a version that's kind of goes through all of that and gives you the instructions for how to build that way. And then if you are visual and auditory, you'll have the course with the lessons that show you how to build the clone. And then what was the last one? Oh, yes. If you just like to reverse engineer stuff, you can have a template that is like the clone fully built, and then you can reverse engineer that way. So yay, that was very cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which does remind me that we are going to be simplifying the pattern import process. I guess we could probably, I can switch over to the voting that I wanted to, and some updates I wanted to share with you guys. But yeah,
there's one question that I did want to talk about in there. Jeremy asked a good one. Are you gonna have private actions that track everyone on the internet inside of this pattern the way that Google does?
Without respecting their privacy?
That's hilarious. I like that. Definitely not, right? I mean, yeah. No cross-site tracking actions going on in Bildr. Yeah, definitely. I think I will probably evolve this just a little bit. It kind of depends on how complex people want these to be, but like I could add user authentication and save the searches that you've input, so that when you go to search again, how Google does, it shows you your previous searches. I don't know how useful that would be in this regard. So I may move on to some of the other clones first and then come back and add to one like this if it's, if people are looking for that, but wanted to start out with a basic one and then move towards the more complex. Yeah, I'd love to hear from everyone, what level of, like how deep should these clones go, right? So we kind of picked this one, Michael picked this one that's, it's fairly basic, right? I mean, it's obviously doesn't have the full breadth of the Google back end behind it, but it's the front end and tying things together, pagination, that kind of stuff that's kind of common in every app. But there's a lot of directions we can go from here. in terms of what type of clone, right? So, you know, two-sided marketplace kind of clones, or, you know, like really in-depth internal tool clones, right? Where we have like dashboards and that kind of thing, connecting to external data and displaying data, that kind of stuff. So any suggestions from y'all, we'd like to hear it. We'd like to know what you're looking for to go next. And then, Michael, I like that idea of coming back to one of these clones later and showing the process of adding to something you've built, because that's also part of it. Is like you left it, it's a normal part of building, right? You got something working, and then 3 months later you're like, I have an idea, let's go back in there, edit that thing and put some stuff in it. And there's a different process that you enter in your mind than starting from blank slate. So I think it'd be cool just to, maybe not in the Google one, but in one of them, it'd be cool to see that.
Yeah, I think so. I think that might be the natural form that some of the more complex ones take, like Twitter. I mean, you could actually clone all of the features of Twitter over time, you know what I mean? But maybe the first version is more simple and I add to it over time.
I like that. I like that. Social network is a good one too, because you have a lot of common things happening in there, like follows and likes and things like that, comments and sub comments. There's a lot in there. And also some of the things that I think would be interesting in there that a lot of people have asked for over time, like how to do things like displaying a link using its OG website information to pull in, you know, like the image and the name and the title and all that, and display it in a nice format. I really like the Twitter one because it's got all these different pieces that are kind of common in a lot of different use cases.
Yeah. Another idea I had, and I don't know if it would be useful for the group, but even as I was building the Google clone, as simple as it was, like every step, and I don't know if I made this clear, but the videos are like me building it in real time, right? So you're following along as I build it. And every step of the way, as I went to do something, I thought to myself, well, there's 3 different ways to do this. Which way should I show? And I just picked, you know, the simplest way. But it could be useful to people to show like, what are all the different ways you could build a search function, and what are the advantages of doing it one way versus the other, right? That might be something that I explore content-wise that could be useful to people, because in Bildr, there's 5 different ways to do anything.
Yeah, I like that too, Michael. I like the idea of, you know, kind of branching out after the fact. Like you could, there's probably 2 or 3 places that you could come back into this Google clone and go, here's the reason that you could do it this way, or this way, but they've already got the main one that's like the easiest way to get it done. I like that method for sure. That's great.
Yeah. So it looks like Jay has some really good feedback that for a starter build, this is like a really good level. It's not too deep. And then like you could take it deeper on subsequent ones. Looks like two-sided marketplace would be something that everyone would like to see.
And Emmanuel, yeah, absolutely. So Michael's going to turn this into a pattern. So you can just bring it right in and then go straight into every part of it. You don't even have to, honestly, patterns, you don't have to actually bring them into your project. You can actually go to the public link of a pattern and just click through everything from there. You can't modify anything in that way, but you can go through and just see how it all works. But then you can just bring it in if you'd like to and start from there. Yeah. One should be able to work in any direction.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes we don't properly convey the power of patterns as a learning tool. And they can be like, man, you could make super deep and complicated patterns. You can add like tutorials in there. Like there's a lot that I think patterns have the potential to do. And they can sit on their own, as Mark said, like as an educational thing. And if you view a pattern in the pattern view, you can click on any page on any element and you'll see if there are any actions that run on that element or any flows. You can go check out how it's set up, like on this button. If you click the button, you'll see all that stuff that's set up to run on it. You'll see any styling that's set on any of the elements. So there's a lot there. You pretty much see how the entire thing is set up. So you don't ever have to actually bring it into your project if you just want to use it as like a learning tool. So
Yeah.
that kind of brings me to the next thing. Did anyone have more feedback?
Just real.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Just real quick, I was just going to comment on the chat with Jay and Fraser. I agree 100%. My theory was that, you know, number one, people always want to see like, what can I build with this tool? What can I build with Bildr? But when it's something unique and, you know, something you're unfamiliar with, you can kind of get lost in the things that are unique to that person's app. I feel like picking a full app that everybody knows and has used, like Twitter, might make it the easiest learning process, because now you get to focus on just what is it about Bildr that I need to learn to get to this full, ready to release app that, you know, has familiar functionality. So I'm excited to get to that one. I think it'll be long. I don't know how many hours of video it'll be, but I think it'll be very useful for everybody. So looking forward to it.
Yeah. See, that's the thing though, is like if someone learns how to do things at that level, then what they can do on their own with their own ideas, it's totally expanded. And so like, I don't know about y'all, but I would be so down to spend 40 hours, 2 weeks, a month, like learning how to do like a lot of complex things if it meant that I could just like pick up and do that on my own in my own projects. Like, I think it would be invaluable. So I love the idea of that.
Well, the promise of visual development is that, right? It's not necessarily that you don't have to learn anything. It's really more that the learning curve goes from a couple of years and a couple of dozen frameworks to a couple of months and 1 or 2 frameworks, right? That's kind of the goal of it. I don't think you're going to ever get to where you can build anything without knowing anything. You know, there's some level of knowledge required. And so our goal is not to make it as fast or as simple as possible, because you do lose something when you do that. At least we haven't seen anybody, including ourselves, figure out how to make it to where you can make it instant to create and limitless in creation ability. Where I think we're all like, the whole movement is like driving towards getting there. And maybe we'll see some GPT-3 or, you know, neural net AI driven stuff that gets us closer and closer to that. But I think the only way to get there is actually to model it on data like what Bildr generates. You need hundreds of thousands or millions of apps built like this, and then you can get to that one day. But even then, at some point you're saying to the computer, I want this. How specific are you going to get with it? You know? So at some point I want Twitter plus or whatever it is. So yeah, we kind of see it as, you need to learn. We want to teach. We want to explain how it all works. And we're totally confident in that if you do learn it, you can do these things, right? And so that's the next step, is just getting everybody the information they need to do it. So I really appreciate Michael. Thank you, Michael, for knocking this first one out. We've got a series of them coming, so excited about it.
I'm really, really excited about it. Which we can now take a vote on what the next set of feature requests is. So of course, if y'all have any feedback or suggestions, like let us know for the educational stuff we're doing, because we are so down to hear it. But I wanted to open up and do like another voting session for what you guys would like the next feature request to be. So we knocked out duplicate flows in this last one. So I'm going to chat you guys some options, and we're just going to talk about these and seeing which one would be fun to add into. Let me put some nice dashes around here. What would be fun to add into this next update that we're doing. So first one is going to be, we kind of talked about this one the last time we did a vote. It is a nice UI for editing data. So modifying it, adding it, deleting it. Basically, you'd go into data collections, and if you have any data for your project, you'd see it there, and you can, you know, modify, add to it, etc. Anything to add to that?
No, I think that's it. You know, just being able to view and create the data without having to create a UI of your own around it.
I should have put numbers around
And then for metrics, I'll talk through metrics real
Yeah.
quick. So metrics is about the end use of whatever it is that you've published or that's in preview. So we actually are already tracking these metrics. So we do have the data. It's stored in your project. It's with your project data. So like when a page load happens, for instance, when you click preview and it loads the page, there's actually a metrics data entered inside of your project that we just haven't built access for you to get to it and see it, right? So we want to show you those metrics of how much data am I using, what's the page load, how many page loads do I have, all those kind of things. And so that's what metrics are. And then
to be clear, that's
yeah,
like,
go ahead.
that's for you guys.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
metrics are for y'all to
Yeah.
use for your own apps. We're not trying to Google. We're not trying to pull a Google on you.
Well, eventually those will be tied to billing of execution apps, right? Like at some point, if your app blows up, it can't always be at, $9 a month, right? It's got to be charged based on that usage. So it will get consumed by us, but it's anonymous data. When you see the data, everything that's in there is what you see is what we see. There's nothing like specific in there unless you specifically say like, I want to track this, or you want to put certain data, and it'll get more and more complex over time. We'll let you add your own metrics and things like that. But really the only thing we care about for billing is what are the level of resources that are being consumed. That's really the only thing we're looking for.
And then, yeah, if y'all have any questions on metrics, let us know. And then what did you want to talk about, like tracking a flow? Like,
there is one.
In...
There's one really cool thing that I've wanted to do in there for a while that I haven't implemented at all, and that's I really would love when we implement metrics to allow you to go to any flow in your project and just check a box that says track the usage of this flow, and then in the metrics, it's kind of like Mixpanel built in, basically, right? Because you can then see broken out per user or just overall. How often is this getting used? And then you can get really fancy with it over time, where if you have, a goal in a tracking tool like Mixpanel or something is basically how many of them did this action and then also did this action. Now, the goal is that they did these two things over some duration or something like that. So if we started doing that, we're giving you this like really easy way to do it and include it in the metrics. Building dashboards on top of that is really it's not that hard to do at that point. I mean, building nice dashboards is always hard, but building dashboards on top of that where you can get the data is not that.
Oh, you could build dashboards and pull in this data.
Yeah. I'm thinking like in the metrics UI, allow you to build your own dashboards effectively around that.
Can you talk about a little bit about what would the benefits be and like what you can do with that?
Well, like for instance, right now, I mean, we do this, right? We have metrics that we track with Mixpanel to see like what are users doing, where are they dropping off,
Mm-hmm.
and you're never really interested in like a specific user. You're interested to see like they sign up and then they do this and then they don't convert. They don't get to the point that we're trying to get them to, and like where's the break off point, and is it a UX problem? Is it a communication problem? Is it an education problem? What's the issue? And it's really hard, or not really hard, but it's like a whole extra layer that you have to think about and add on to every product you ever build. And so those are the kind of problems that we would like to make easy to solve, just go through and say, I want to know when somebody clicks that button, and this is goal 1 and goal 2 and goal 3 kind of thing. And then you can just see it, and you don't have to use an external tool. You don't have to do any of that. And the nice thing about it too would be, like, I'm thinking from the standpoint of, I launch side projects too. Drew launches side projects too. So we use it and do this stuff, and I have to go set up Mixpanel and figure out all my tracking metrics, and modifying those tracking metrics. I got to go into my Bildr project, add another Mixpanel event, then go wait and release that, and then go into Mixpanel and set everything up over there. And it's just all these different steps. And I think we could cut those steps out. Yeah, I just think we could.
And what about for, like, could they build their own, like if they have a really successful app that's running, can they build their own, like use these to build their own like admin dashboards where they could see how many like page visits they're getting and things like that.
I think version 1 of the metrics area would just be sort of like, we'll pick static things to, in some level of dynamic, if we do this track a flow thing, where you can say, pick flow 1, flow 2, flow 3, and we'll build some dynamic thing. But ultimately that's all your data. We really just need to let you have access to it, do whatever you want with it. There's no, it's really the whole point of that side of the metrics. Like, that doesn't have anything to do with Bildr, really. It's really, that's for you to know how your users are consuming the product you're building with Bildr. So the goal would be to let you take that data and do whatever you want with it. I think the most efficient place to do that will be in the studio. So allowing you to build custom dashboards on top of that data in the studio is probably where we would go with it, at least to start.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so next up in the list to vote on would be external APIs to Bildr data collection. So this is basically making any data that you have in Bildr, allowing it to be available to be pulled and modified and whatnot by external APIs, right?
Yeah, it's allowing another product to get at the data inside of your project.
Okay,
right?
good. So that's one as well. And then the next one is hotkeys. I know we've talked about this before. We've got some requests for like a hotkey for quickly adding a container or like a div in, things like that. So if hotkeys would make it a lot faster and easier for y'all to work, you can vote on that one. So similar to
real quick though, on the hotkeys, Drew and I were chatting about hotkeys the other day. And Drew was mentioning Superhuman's universal hotkey, was it Command K, right? And when you do it, it pulls up a list of all the actions, and you can literally just search the actions and just hit enter or down arrow through them, grab the one you want and hit enter. And I really like that approach. I'm not a Superhuman user, but that approach sounds really interesting to me, because then you're sort of like making your own, you're doing your own hotkeys as you go, and we can do things. Just, I'm assuming Superhuman does something smart, Drew, like, here's the most common ones at the top kind of thing, or that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's super contextual. They're really good at it. The other thing that does it is like 3D modeling programs usually have a similar thing where there's like one key combination you remember and it pulls up your list of hotkeys. But yeah, that would be something amazing for Bildr, just because there's so much you can do. And then when it pulls it up, it could be the couple things that make sense, if you're selected on an element or if you're selecting an action, but then you can just search for whatever you want to do. So you don't even really have to remember any hotkeys. You just think, add an action, and you type it out, and then it comes up and press enter.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, awesome.
And then the other part of hotkeys is navigation inside of the element panel on the left. So, especially in context to this new plus menu there. So navigating up and down and in and out of child and parent elements, and then getting to that plus and adding children, deleting things, all with the hotkeys. I'm finding myself wanting to do that more and more. And then the last piece is just doing a universal thing, or not universal, but a consistent through the whole UI. Anywhere there's a menu, just down arrow through the menu. Because right now, none of those have down arrow. So like if you're selecting a new property in inside of a style, or really all of them, anywhere where there's a search and a set of rows, just allow you to down arrow through those, hit enter on the one you want, and add it in.
I like it. All right, looks like we have some votes for y'all's order of preference in. So I will go through that, and then as we are working on the next set of things, we'll pick one or two of these out.
And then
am I forgetting something?
Well, no, I just wanted to grab on to what Fraser had chatted there about the admin panel. Drew and I have talked about that quite a bit too, of like, we need to just build like a CMS or an admin panel, or that's a pattern that you can just drop into your project and it dynamically grabs all the collections. And I'm actually building that for our data. The data collection editable UI really is that, because what I'm doing is it's like a CMS, right? It's just take the collection ID, take all the field IDs, and dynamically build out your editable data, the data display. It's the same thing as any CMS or any admin panel that's dynamic like that. You're just feeding at the top level thing. Here's the collection that I'm wanting to look at, and then here's the information below that is all just dynamically built. So yeah, we totally agree with that. I think that would go a long way, because you're right, especially for internal tools. If you're building an internal tool for a business or for a company that you're working for or something, or working with, there's always this need for, here's what the users see, but then here's what the admin of that company needs to do to facilitate that working properly. So absolutely, Fraser, I like that a lot. Cool.
And then quick updates on some of the things we'll be rolling out in the next 2 years that kind of go few years.
Few years.
In the next few.
It's a long time.
In the next few weeks that are coming out that are not necessarily tied to a release. Dorian's just about wrapped up with an official Xano integration. Is it Xano?
Xano
Xano integration. So we're going to release that in a pattern, and then you'll have all the actions to set that up if you want to use them for a back end.
Yep.
And then we're about to release a big blog going, I think there's 3 of them, right? That go through Chrome extension. So if you guys are wanting to turn an app into a Chrome extension, this is going to be your jam. It's going to take you through the whole process that Mark had to go through to get it published, right? Do you want to
there's
speak a little on that?
So that's a 3-part thing real quick. ETA on Xano, they're ready to go, Fraser. Me and Drew need to test them just to make sure that there's nothing missed, but Dorian is probably the most thorough of us. He's like super thorough. So I would bet we're not going to find anything in there. They've actually been ready this whole week. So we just haven't gotten to it. So we need to get on that. We got the production release out, get on that. So next week is my expectation on the Xano stuff. It's really more content at this point. I need to write a blog post, content about it, fill out all the details. We need to get a lesson around it. That's kind of where we're at with it.
That stuff always takes longer than the actual building.
That's the big part of it now.
We can share the pattern early though. If anyone wants it now, there's no reason we can't share the actual pattern. Yeah. I mean, I'll have to go grab the links from Dorian, but yeah.
Yeah, no worries. If you guys want to grab it and play around with it before we have all the docs in there, no problem. We can get it over to you. And it's just like most of those API level things. You need to go, you got to get your token, your secret or your token or whatever it is that you're connecting, and fill in those details in the actions. But other than that, it should be ready to go. For the Chrome extension blog post, it's a 3-part series. The first blog post, I've already written all 3 of them, so they'll all come out together. It should be like Monday or Tuesday. Final review on those blog posts now. Basically, the first one is how you export your thing from your Chrome extension from Bildr. So what do you need in there first? What are the different use cases of this? How, not really any detail on like how to actually build a web app in Bildr. That's a separate thing, like what Michael's building. But the thing about a Bildr Chrome extension is it's effectively your app in a Chrome extension. And then there's specific actions that allow you to interact, take your app and make it interact with the page. But our Chrome extension is actually, it's really just it's a very simple Chrome extension that does some really smart messaging services between your Bildr project that's loaded in the extension and the web browser. And it's an open-ended API, effectively, a messaging API. So if you know JavaScript, you can actually just write your own actions and have those things do their own things to Chrome itself. And you can take full advantage of the Chrome APIs to do that. So we'll roll it out we've got a couple of actions that come with it that you can bring into your project, but it's completely extensible, just like everything else we build. So the second blog post is about how you test a Chrome extension. So this is going into Chrome, turning on developer mode, manually loading it into your local Chrome browser so that you can test the whole thing out. And then the third post is about how you actually submit that for review to the Chrome Web Store. So you have to like register yourself as a Google Chrome web developer. I think it's like $5 lifetime access. And then you can publish it. And there's 3 methods to publish it, and there's a review process, and the more APIs you're using, the longer the review process takes. And so there's a lot of things in there that we have no control over at that point, right? It's just totally up to Google. But what I found is they're relatively, they don't really even, I don't think they even pay attention to what's happening in the app, because the one that I published first,
Isn't that surprising?
the first time I published it, I had made a change to it and didn't test it before I published it up there, and it got accepted and didn't even work. Like you click it and it would load, but the thing didn't even operate. And so the first time I did it, so I don't think they're actually like going in and checking to see what your Chrome extension does. The only thing they really care about is what are the permissions you're asking for. So like if you ask for getting the session cookie information or something like that, then they're probably going to be more rigorous on you than if you're just wanting to like display a web app or something. So yeah, that. And then there's also, I've got a set of date time actions. These are like transforming date times and doing things that I need to get published out. And Drew has a couple of those as well. Same kind of thing. It's all content for all this stuff now. These things are already ready. So. And Emmanuel, hang on, Emmanuel asked one question on there.
And we do have another question we're going to go do from earlier, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the common use cases, Emmanuel. There's sort of like, I see it as there's several use cases, but one of the most common ones is really similar to what you're talking about, where you basically have some form of context on a page, like, I'm on a certain website, and maybe your app, your Chrome extension app, checks to see what domain the user's in, and then based on that does something, right? Like displays a certain set of videos or displays something like that. That's sort of like a context aware thing. Then there's what I would call like a general scraper or clipper. And the cool thing about how it's done in Bildr is you're just pulling data, you're clipping anything you want off the page based on the actions. So you just define these actions to grab whatever you want, bring it into now you're in a Bildr page, which means you can take that data and do whatever you want with it. You can store it in the local Bildr database. You could send it to an Airtable base. You could really do whatever you want to do with it at that point. And because the users when the user goes and opens your Chrome extension, they're authenticating in. If you want them to, you can have them like sign in. So now you're letting them save it to their own thing. So one of the ones that another Bildr user is wanting to create right now is this ability to basically go pull data off of a site, but instead of storing it in a database that his project knows about, he's going to allow his end users to put in their own Airtable credentials so that it's storing in their users' Airtable database, you know? So you can really do anything you want with that, because it's just a full-blown web app at that point, living inside of that Chrome extension, and it can do anything you want it to do.
Coolio. All right. We had an earlier question from Emmanuel that we are going to show. So either Drew or Mark, y'all can take this, but he had asked if we can show how to make a grid view instead of a list view. So just making it vertical instead of horizontal. Is that right?
Like cars.
So how to make it horizontal instead of vertical.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So
Drew, do you want to do this one? This is mainly going to be about styling.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I think we can do it in one of two ways, right? Because we have a list, we have a grid row, and we have a grid card.
Sure.
And then you could also just style the grid row, right, to make it.
Well, this is sort of like getting to what Michael had mentioned earlier. Like, well, it depends. There's like 3 or 4 ways you can do it. So it depends on the use case, but there are some commonalities across all of them. Cool. And Manuel, are you looking to make something like a Pinterest type board where they kind of like stack in, or is it more like
trying to make a card, he said.
Like just a set of cards. Okay, perfect. Yep.
So we could show him where that element is, and we could show the styling that's on it if you want. Yeah. However you want to do it, Drew.
I figured, so there's like you guys were just talking about, there's so many ways, but I think like the actual like base level case might be the easiest way. I'm gonna set this up quick while I'm talking, but I'll just put a grid list and then change some of the styles on the actual grid element that can control all that stuff basically. But first I need to put that grid element and put like another page and put something on this page to kind of, so we can see it.
So this is if you're manually building that card page, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I can do the one with the built-in next, but this way it's like it applies to literally anything.
Gotcha, cool.
I didn't name these pages, guys. Pick the right one. So yeah, so I just set up a grid list here and a page here, and this page is whatever you want. So if it looks like a card, you know, if you have like a border, a background, or something, and it looks visually a card, you can make it a card. But you make it a card on this actual grid list. So if I have this this element here, it comes with a style grid list of pages rows, which stacks them basically, and that's like what I would consider default HTML. Like it's block level, it's just stacking stuff, stacking boxes. And I don't think there's many styles on this. So yeah, there's almost nothing on here. So it's really just you're stacking. There are list items in the code, but it's like you're just stacking boxes. So what I normally would do, I just keep that. You know, these properties help a little bit, this padding and the list style. Otherwise, it would have little bullets. So I usually just keep that, and I'll add a class here to dictate the layout. So if I wanted them to be blocks like this, I don't need to add anything. I'm done. But a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm making a new utility class. And so there's two ways that you can do it basically with flexbox, or grid, the two CSS methods. So I would either have like grid flex or like grid like that usually. So I'll do a flexbox first. And so like, again, this is CSS. You basically have to either know this or kind of like look up this concept in CSS. But you'd find that there's display, which by default, display block is what looks like this. You can change the display to flex. And you can see like already, let me actually zoom out a little. Already it's kind of looking what you want. I'm just going to do this so we can see it a little better. All right. So you can see like it's already in cards just by adding that one property, grid flex. But grid flex, and this is something again you'd want to Google basically. Grid flex comes with tons of other properties. So actually, I think some of them are listed right in here. If you're on this all props view, display is the first thing. You change that to flex, and there's these things under here like flex direction, flex wrap, justify content. These are all things that are specific to Flexbox to help you with the layout. So if you wanted like a centered layout, you could justify centered, or you can put space in between them. I mean, these are weird because I don't have any margin or padding. And it's like, I wish I could show this better.
Do a wrap on it.
So like, yeah, flex wrap, there you go.
And
because there's 3 elements in the grid by default, Flex will put them all in the same line unless I tell Flex to wrap. Then it'll wrap to the next line. So there's a bunch of properties in there, and it like doesn't actually make sense to go through all of them because there's so many combinations. Like this is how you would build any layout essentially. So you kind of just have to Google when you get to these properties. But Flex is one way to just quickly swap that out and have things lined side by side. And it's like each one of these pages, you can think of it as a block. And so instead of taking up the whole width, now it'll let them be side by side. But another way that I actually use more often.
Before you go to grid.
Yeah.
Before you go to grid, because I want to show the difference in how you would do like the spacing between flex and grid real quick. So like if you go to the child page.
I will, yeah. There's a new thing. There's a new, so like I like nerded out over this, but you can actually do the spacing in Flex now, like on the grid.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I should get into that.
Sorry, you go ahead and do yours then. Go ahead. I just want to make sure you go back and forth.
We'll show how you can do it via the grid, and then we'll show how you can do it via the child element, the actual page.
Yeah, I can do that. So when you're using Flexbox, traditionally with Flexbox, if you wanted space in between the columns and rows, you would go to the child page and add like a margin or some kind of space. So like I would say like a margin of 1em, and it adds that space around, and you kind of control the spacing and the sizing. Like, so if I wanted these to be like an even 33%, 333, I would come in here to this and like change the width or something. Like you do all the CSS on that actual child page, which actually is like I don't use Flex that often because of that, because I hate that I have to go through and edit child pages. But one thing that's like that just came out, basically didn't just come out, it just became well supported enough that you can use it across all browsers, is you can actually, there's a gap, like a column gap property where I can just say column gap 1em and it'll put that in. And I don't actually even know if there's a row gap.
I don't
There's a
either.
grid row gap. This might not work.
Yeah.
That worked. So yeah, so like in this case, I'm putting a couple properties on the actual grid list. And then I don't have to care about what's in this page. I could load other pages. They'd have the same spacing. Like, it's a little more control. So that's actually, like, I would prefer to do this gap method personally. I hate having to go in and edit spacing in here. But yeah, anything else about Flex?
No, that was it. I just wanted to show the difference between it, because now you're going to go and do the grid view, which gives you those same powers.
Yeah,
you know?
and grid. So the difference between Flex and grid, the reason there's two, Flex is actually more. It's a little more versatile. It's like shoving stuff in side by side. It can be, each row can have different column widths. It's like a little more freeform. Whereas grid, as you can imagine, is like a grid. Like it whatever is in that grid element, it's going to keep gridded up, and it's a little more rigid. But I love grid. It's like one of my favorite properties. I use it all the time.
Like it'll evenly space everything.
Yeah, like from like across columns and across rows, it'll evenly space everything, and it's like harder to break that grid. Whereas in Flex, it's actually just justifying everything left. It's kind of like shoving everything together. It's not really a grid. Grid is more has more constraints, but like that's kind of good, especially for design. So for grid, it's very similar, where you do display and you do grid instead of Flex. But if you notice, like, it didn't change at all at first, because grid relies on this template thing. So if you search grid template columns and grid template rows, you're going to set up basically like what your template for your grid looks like. So with grid template columns, I could say like the first column's 30 pixels, the second column's 60 pixels, and then the last column fills out the rest of the space, or is whatever width it is. You can see it looks crazy, but that's what it is. But the cool thing, the kind of like power of this property, is they have this fractional width. So if I did one fractional width, one fractional width, one fractional width, it would split it like even threes. And then I add the same kind of like column gap property to put some space in the middle. So I'll design layouts like this all day. And then whatever I put in, I don't have to worry about the width or the spacing or anything on this child. It just fits right in, because I did one fractional width. Or if I wanted, like, I could say, I want the first column to be 30 pixels, and then I want the last two columns to split whatever width is left evenly. So it would look like that. So you can get like pretty advanced with the layouts. And then if I had only two columns in my template, it would actually put the next one as a row, like, it creates another row, and I can have row spacing, and I can have row templates to say that, the first row is 100 pixels tall and the next row is auto. So you can kind of do a lot layout wise with grid, and it's my preferred method for sure. But this is how I would do cards. And if I wanted, 4 cards across, I would do 4 of these. And then I would say, like, at this responsive size, 768, switch that to 2 across like this. And so then what happens if I preview that is it'll just be, not sure which page it is. Let's see.
Well, there's also no data. You got to put default data.
Oh, yeah. I'll put like 4 of them, I guess. So there's like 4 across, and then as I go small, switch to 2 across. And like I didn't add any row gap yet, but I would add a row gap to make that look nice. But I think that's the easiest way to make cards. If you want them to be gridded like that, because then you don't run into any problems with their width. If one of them's too small, it's gonna fill the width. If one of them's too big, it's not gonna mess up your layout with other rows. It's gonna stick to what it is. And that really just comes from this display grid and this template property. Everything else is like icing on the cake. You can just add your preference, but you need these 2, and then you'll create that layout. I don't know. Does that actually answer your question too? Is that kind of the level you were looking for?
Yeah, that works. That works really well. That will get me to point 3 on my journey of what I need to do. So this is great.
Awesome.
I'll just come every week with my next challenge and be like, oh, this week, can we do APIs?
That's perfect. Let's do it. No, really. And yeah, Drew and I are working on ways to get those types of questions easier asked and easier answered in group format too. So you don't have to wait 2 weeks between, so feel free to reach out as well. And then one thing I would add to what Drew was talking about there with grid and flex, the problem I've had with flex, and it's like finally pushing me over the edge to want to go all the way in with grid and only use grid, is really what Drew just went through there. So in grid, he defined that I want 4 columns by doing the 1FR 4 times across. In flex, if you want that same thing, you can do it, but you've got to go to the child and say 25% width, and then it'll do it. But then now every time you want to make a change, you're going to 2 different places. Typically, you got to go to the parent and you got to go to the child now, right? So
plus add in margins for spacing, like if you put margins, then it's not actually 25% width. So you have to do like a calc on the width. It adds a lot of complexity when you get into it.
It's a mess to get it consistently right with dynamic data, right? Oh.
And if you're like not to that level like I am, just use the pre-styled grid card.
Oh, I forgot to show that. Yeah.
Well,
so that's what I
still have to do what I did, I think, though.
And then I just.
You still have to do what Drew did.
What do you mean?
To make it.
To have it be in.
To make it do the proper columns and
sure,
responsiveness. Yeah.
I just piggyback off the styling of what is on that block instead of having to design it myself. But I'll always take the easiest route. Okay. Anything else, you guys? I think we are ready to wrap.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you all so much for another really, really great time. We are going to start on the next round of things. Thank you for casting your votes. If you guys have any questions, chat us in the community. I shall upload this so you guys can refer to it later. And have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.
There you go.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.